Let's hear it again for Tiffany Wilson. Thank you. So this month we're activating the innocent archetype. In a review, we start with the words of Jesus, who said, "Unless you become as a little child, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven." And the characteristics of a child are that of curiosity, open-mindedness, playfulness, being without prejudice, and humility. So these are the characteristics that we are calling in with this archetype of the innocent. According to Pearson, there are 3 levels, as there are 3 levels to all the archetypes. But the first is the true innocent who accepts things as they are and obeys authority. And the last couple of weeks I've used the example of Persephone, who's sort of skipping around and life is wonderful and everything's great. And then the second level of the innocent is the descent into the underworld, the experience of disillusionment and disappointment while maintaining faith. And then the third level is the wise innocent, which is trust and optimism without denial. In other words, really seeing what's going on in the world and in our lives, and yet maintaining that sense of faith and expectation of goodness in each other and in the world. The people who most demonstrate the innocent archetype are quiet heroes. They don't draw a lot of attention to themselves, but they do good works in the world. The innocent archetype also is connected with the orphan or the everyman or the every woman. And I think in film, Jimmy Stewart and Tom Hanks probably portray the everyman probably better than anyone else. So the innocent is the ordinary person who perhaps does extraordinary things, but without notice or fanfare. And I believe that Jesus embodied many of the archetypes that we have studied so far this year, including the innocent. He kind of went about his business in teaching and healing without a lot of fanfare. And he described the actions of the innocent in Matthew chapter 6, verse 1, when he said, "Beware of practicing your charity before others in order to be seen by them, for then you have no reward from your Father in heaven. So whenever you give alms, do not sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, so that they may be praised by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward. But when you give alms, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your alms may be done in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you." This describes the mindset of the innocent. If you perform a good deed and get accolades for it, well then that's a reward in itself. And what is that a reward to? It's a reward to the ego. Don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. In other words, it's there in front of you, so we just do it, right? We just do it. And there's this mystical experience that happens here, the way he says, your Father who sees in secret will reward you. So it's not like an outer thing that we can hang our hat on, but rather something that opens and affects the soul and expands in consciousness. So this morning, I wanted to call out a few quiet heroes that have that some known and some unknown. And the first that comes to mind, of course, is Mother Teresa, right? I mean, you probably already like, yeah, Mother Teresa. She's a great example of someone who embodied the innocent archetype and also the different levels. So at level 1, she's a good nun, and she taught school in India for 20 years. So we can see, her obeying the rules and just kind of doing her work and loving others and all that. But then comes the fall. Level 2 comes the fall. And this happened when she was appalled by the misery that she was witnessing in Calcutta. The Bengal famine of 1943 brought misery and death to the city. And the outbreak of the Muslim-Hindu violence in August of 46 plunged the city into despair and horror. And so what happens to Mother Teresa in this fall, in this place of delusionment and disappointment, is that she receives a call within the call. So she's already been called to God. She's already a nun. But then she receives another call. She wrote in, so she gets this call from God that she is to be a minister to the poor. And so she spends that first year fraught with difficulties when she decides to do this. She has no income. She begs for food and supplies, and she experiences doubt, loneliness, and the temptation to return to the convent where everything was comfortable, right? And this is what she wrote in her diary. She said, "Our Lord wants me to be a free nun covered with the poverty of the cross. Today, I learned a good lesson. The poverty of the poor must be so hard for them. While looking for a home, I walked and walked until my arms and legs ached. And I thought how much they must ache in body and soul looking for a home, for food, and for health. And then the comfort of Loretto, which was her former convent, came to tempt me. You only have to say the word, and all this will be yours again," the tempter kept on saying. "A free choice, my God, and out of love for you, I desire to remain and do whatever be your holy will in my regard." And I did not let a single tear come. So we see this great example of the innocent archetype who goes about doing her work, and then the fall happens, right? She is exposed to the misery that she sees in Calcutta, and within that misery, there is a call within a call. And in 1949, she begins her ministry to the outcast, to the poor, to the dying. And in 1950, the Vatican approved her missionaries of charity. And so we all know her story, don't we? We all know that thousands of people have been ministered to by her, and have continued even after she has made her transition. So she makes a descent and then comes out this wise, innocent, and this quiet hero. Carol Pearson said this about innocence. She said, "Innocents act as magnets who attract and galvanize positive energy for change. They do this by identifying the places where growth can occur for individuals, institutions, or social groups, and then by fostering it." So they see the good, and then they go about finding ways to bring it to fruition without fanfare, without a blast of trumpets. And we know that Mother Teresa, even though she became worldwide and famous, she didn't start out that way, nor was that ever her intention, right? Her intention was simply to serve and to give and to heal. So she's one example of the innocent. The second one that I want to share with you is a woman named Irena Sendler. And Irena Sendler was also kind of a true innocent. She worked for the social welfare department in Poland. And again, she was going about doing her business, the innocent, obeying the rules, doing her work. And then the Nazis invaded Poland, and the Germans set up the Jewish ghetto where you couldn't get out and you couldn't get in, and then they were transported to concentration camps, and it was pretty horrific. But because she worked for the social welfare system, the Germans were concerned about the spread of typhus. So she was able to go in and out of the ghetto because she had the credentials, and she was able to do this. And what she noticed was some pretty horrific things. So here's the descent again, here's the fall, here's the disillusionment and the disappointment, but within that comes the real call. And so what she does, along with her coworkers, is she starts smuggling out the children. And she puts the kids in suitcases, she puts them in toolboxes, she has to come out with stretchers, she puts them under the stretcher, or they pretend that they're sick and she takes them on top of the stretcher. She brings them in through pipes underground, she brings them in through the courthouse. And this is at no small risk to herself, because at that time, if you were caught helping the Jews, then not only were you put to death, but so was your whole family. So in order to step out and help someone, you were risking not only your own life, but you were risking the lives of those around you. And yet, she brought these children out. So as she would bring them out, she would write down their names, but then she would give them a new name, because obviously if they found out that they were Jews, they would get sent right back. And they were given to orphanages, they were given to families, they were given to a convent. And what she would do is she would write down the name of the child and their new name, and then she put it in a jar and buried it. And she and her co-workers ended up saving 2,500 children. Because with the writing of the name, her intention was that after the war, the kids could be returned to their parents. And of course, at the end of the war, most of their parents were gone because they had been sent off to a concentration camp. No one really knew about Irena Sendler, because in her true innocence, she did not trumpet what she did. She didn't let her left hand know what her right hand was doing, right? She just did the works. And so no one really knew what she was doing or did until 1999 in Union City, Kansas, of all places. The high school was studying the war, and in this study of the war, they discovered her life. And these kids, with their teacher, wrote a play called Life in a Jar. And it was all about her life. She was the inspiration and the prime mover for the whole network that saved 2,500 children. So in Uniontown, Kansas, this became public. And this is what Irena said about her experience with these kids. She said, "Every child saved with my help is the justification of the existence in this earth and not a title to my glory." Spoken like a true innocent, that her help was part of her existence in this world and not a title to her glory. So think about the times when you have maybe lost your innocence, when you've become cynical or hardened by the different news or events that have happened not only in the world but in your life. And what has that dissent been for you? What was that disillusionment and that disappointment? Because the key to the wise innocent is to go through, it's not to avoid horrible experiences. It is not to avoid those things, but to go in them fully and completely with your eyes open to get the call within the call and to become the wise innocent. And that's where our work truly comes. And that is the gift of the innocent. So could you lower the screen? So there's so much in the news that is negative. I mean, this morning yesterday was the experience in New York, and we hold New York in our prayers. And because there's so much negativity in the news, that it can skew our perception of the world. And we can lose sight of the fact that there is so much goodness and there is so much kindness in the world. And I believe that in order to keep our innocence, we must expose ourselves to the good and surround ourselves with others who maintain a loving consciousness. So as kind of a little break, I thought I would I've shown this before, but I think this is something we could probably watch every day. It's only 1.5 minutes, but take a look at some good works in the world. So we saw acts of kindness, we saw acts of silliness, because Jesus said, in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, we must become as little children. Also in this video, we saw acts of spontaneous kindness and help. Don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. And so finally, I'd also like to call out the quiet heroes within our own community, of which there are many. And that is our prayer team who pray. When you put a prayer request in that prayer box, it doesn't sit there. It gets taken out and distributed to about 30 or 40 people who hold and bless you throughout the week. Our own prayer chaplains who hold you in prayer and confidence. The garden party who comes here once a month and cleans up and creates order. Our outreach team, Mike and Diane Brennan and Mike, who do so much and they do it quietly. And next week I want to call out Gail Piper, but this week I wanted to call out Julia Hill because she recently returned from an adventure with Patch Adams. So if we could see, there's a montage of her experience. And I've asked her to write to me a bit about what her experience is, because I think this is a combination of the innocent and the jester, these two archetypes together. She said, my experience on the clowning and caring trip was beyond measure. 45 colorful souls became my new clown family, combining our talents and energy to bring laughter, fun, and connection to communities marginalized in one form or another. We spent 2 mornings clowning and caring at the La Carpio community of 30,000 mostly Nicaraguan illegal immigrants who live in dire poverty on the fringes of society in San Jose, literally next to a garbage dump. Patch has been bringing this invading force of loving clowns annually for nearly 10 years and closely supports the ongoing efforts of community organizers. We visited a woman's prison and created a joyous event for the women that was more like kids playing at recess. We learned how severe the punishments are for minor crimes. I am changed at depth through this experience, and it only strengthens my resolve to find ways to offer my energy in meaningful service. Thank you, Julia. And so again, there's the 3 levels, the innocent of, everything's great, and then I see clearly. I see the immigrants and the refugees and the garbage dump, and I still see the good, and I still call it out, becoming the quiet and wise hero. So I invite you to awaken that quiet hero in you. When you find yourself in the place of disillusionment, when you find yourself in the fall, this is where the calling within the calling can happen. This is where the true calling is. And this is when the quiet hero or the wise innocent is activated in you, and there is great potential to increase the loving consciousness in the world. No one may ever know what you have done, but your Father who sees in secret will reward you. That's a guarantee.